Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking an early look at the brand new Community Day Incineroar with its two new moves of Blast Burn and Darkest Lariat. As always for these early Com Day sneak peeks, these battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Smudgy B, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now Darkest Lariat, it's the first time it's been added to Pokemon Go. 120 damage, only 60 energy, this thing packs a punch. Since the Open Ultra League, which looks to be Incineroar's best league, isn't currently available, we're going to be taking a look at some practice Open Ultra League battles, testing it out. Hopping into the first match, picking up a great lead Virizion into Greedent. Giratina save switch, and in comes Incineroar, and it's the shiny as well. Gotta be one of the best shinies in the game. Dragon Claw, that's not gonna do a lot. Incineroar, no baits here, going straight for the Darkest Lariat. Oh my goodness, that damage is absurd, and that animation is top tier as well. Let's go. Incineroar gets the Snarl farm down, in comes Greedent. Greedent going to be now met with the Blast Burn. Blast Burn is going to connect, dealing some pretty sizable damage. Incineroar threatening another Blast Burn. Greedent forced to throw energy in this matchup, unable to commit to a Mudshot farm down. In comes Virizion, but in the back, it's Alolan Ninetales, and it's running Charm. Ampharos trying to go for the Thunder Punch, but just before it gets there, Alolan Ninetales will go for the Weather Ball. The overfarm by the Ampharos. Very nice timing, as Ampharos does make it to the back-to-back Thunder Punches. Forced to throw them back-to-back here to prevent the Ninetales from making it to another Weather Ball. Thunder Punch is going to be shielded up by the opponent. Opponent is going to get the farm down, and now it's up to Virizion to try and clutch this. And Virizion goes for the Leaf Blade, but loses the CMP tie to the Ninetales. This Leaf Blade is not going to be enough to KO, but it is going to get the Ninetales deep into the red. Ninetales going to try and make it to another move. They cannot get there. In comes the Greedent. Greedent now going to be met with the Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword is going to connect, getting Greedent low. Greedent will fire off the Body Slam. Can Greedent make another Body Slam? If they can, this will be trouble. Greedent does not get there. And the Virizion able to leave with the Leaf Blade loaded. Leaf Blade takes down the Ninetales and secures the win. Tough lead in the next match, Virizion into Cresselia. Immediate save switch into the Shadow Ampharos. Opponent is going to respond with the Greedent. It is good to bait this out. Greedent would crush Incineroar with the Mudshot Body Slam spam combination. Now this Shadow Ampharos is not running Focus Blast, but the opponent does not know that. The Thunder Punch does get the shield from the opponent, and now Ampharos is looking for whatever damage it can with Thunder Punch number 2. The no shield by the opponent. Opponent looking to overfarm. This is very close to Body Slam range. Just gonna let this through and say, you know what? Baited out the Greedent. We'll save 2 shields for the shiny Incineroar in the back and hope for the best. In comes the Virizion. This Greedent has a massive amount of energy, so trying to double kick this down is genuinely going to be annoying for the Virizion. Virizion, tries to go for the move, but one turn beforehand, the Body Slam is going to be thrown. Virizion saying, you know what? I am done with Greedent. The Sacred Sword is going to pick up the KO. Looking to switch into the Incineroar in the back. It's a Shadow Magnezone. Shadow Magnezone farming up energy, and it looks like that is a CMP tie. Incineroar is going to commit the shield. It's the Mirror Shot. Opponent trying to fish for the bait. Incineroar going for the Blast Burn. Blast Burn is going to be shielded. The Magnezone trying to get this Incineroar closer and closer to Moonblast range. The Wild Charge does get shielded. Incineroar is going to fire off this Blast Burn, and that's going to be a massive overkill to the Shadow Magnezone. Now the question will be, this is a full health Cresselia. Can a Darkest Lariat KO? And can Incineroar tank a Moonblast? Moonblast not going to KO. We're going to see the Darkest Lariat reach. This is a full health Cresselia. Darkest Lariat, big damage. We see the switch into the Virizion and firing off the Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade not going to be enough to KO, but it will get the opponent low. The opponent makes it to a Moonblast. It all comes down to this. Both Pokemon remaining have fractional health. The Snarl versus the Psycho Cut. Incineroar takes down the Cresselia and clutches the win. Picking up a great lead in the next match, Virizion versus the Shadow Feraligatr. And Feraligatr is staying in this matchup. Opponent tries for a Leaf Blade catch onto Registeel. It is unsuccessful, and now Registeel is in a terrible spot as it's down energy in a pretty negative matchup locked into the Virizion. Virizion more than happy to stay in here and apply Sacred Sword after Sacred Sword to the Registeel, which moments after switching in is already into the red health. Focus Blast is going to connect. Virizion is going to look to overfarm to the back-to-back Sacred Swords, firing off that energy just before Registeel makes Focus Blast number 2. Sacred Sword is going to KO. It's unlikely that we do see the Feraligatr here. Opponent sends in their final Pokemon, and it's Como-O. Como-O will look for a potential farm down. The Sacred Sword is barely able to be reached. Virizion putting in absolutely massive work here, as Sacred Sword is going to be shielded by the opponent. So Como-O has a lot of energy, but the Como-O is down a shield. In comes the Ampharos, as Como-O is a bit of a problem now that the Virizion is out of the way. Ampharos calls a bait. Ampharos is now going to fire off the Thunder Punch. Thunder Punch, not going to be enough to knock out here. We are going to see a no shield by the Como-O. Como-O will go for the Dragon Claw. Decision time for the Ampharos, choosing to let it go, saving 2 shields for the Incineroar. Incineroar farming up energy. Como-O firing off a move. It is the Dragon Claw. We do see the shield from the Incineroar. Incineroar, the opponent trying to potentially catch a Blast Burn there, unable to do so. Darkest Lariat gets the shield, and that is a CMP tie. Incineroar is going to commit the shield as the Hydro Cannon is reached. Incineroar farming up, able to make the Darkest Lariat just before the Hydro Cannon is reached. Let's see this damage. Goodbye, Feraligatr. In comes the Como-O, and it all comes down to this. Como-O with 1 HP. Did they make the close combat? They did make the close combat, and it's a heartbreaking defeat. We've got a mirror lead in the next match, Virizion versus Virizion. The backline, not a big fan of seeing Virizion. Even the Incineroar does get outpaced by the Virizion, and Snarl is of course not going to be doing much of any fast move damage, so pretty nice to see this on the lead. But of course staying in means that there could be a potential ground type or a Greedent in the back that could potentially be quite problematic. Both Virizion massively over farming, choosing to save energy, save switch into the Shadow Ampharos to check and see, is there something in the back that Incineroar doesn't want to see? The Leaf Blade is going to connect, Virizion is going to bank a move, send in their own Shadow Ampharos, and going to fire off the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing does a lot of damage. It's going to be a CMP tie. The opponent loses the CMP tie. Brutal Swing number 2, and that will be enough to pick up the knockout. The opponent, are they going to send in the low health Virizion here? Yes, they are. Virizion choosing to massively overfarm and fire off its energy just before Ampharos is able to make it to a move. Leaf Blade is going to pick up the KO, and now a choice. You can't really ever Snarl down, so you kind of have to bring in your own Virizion, going for the Sacred Sword, but losing the CMP tie, forced to commit the shield. And now, what does the opponent want to do? Do they want to match shields? The opponent matches shields, so it looks like the opponent might be weak to Virizion in the back as well. Sacred Sword is now going to be no shielded in the back. It's a Shadow Magnezone. Magnezone forced to respect the damage from the Sacred Sword, but then you can just send in Incineroar. Incineroar farming up energy. Opponent makes it to the Mirror Shot plus the Wild Charge double up, but it is a CMP tie, so the Mirror Shot bait gets shielded, but the opponent is unable to use the Wild Charge as Blast Burn takes the victory. Picking up a very positive lead in the next match, Virizion versus Shadow Steelix. Virizion, oh man, the opponent staying in this lead matchup, going for the Sacred Sword. It looks like, unfortunately, there may have been 1 turn of lag there, so the Sacred Sword didn't actually register, and it looks like that was the case. That's very unfortunate to see. And the Steelix is staying in and going for Psychic Fang, so the opponent must be core broken by the Virizion lead. Virizion, this time the Sacred Sword does register, winning charge attack priority, and the Sacred Sword is going to pick up the knockout. In comes Giratina. 2 decent responses in the back, but choosing to stay in with the Virizion, as of course, the Shadow Ampharos down energy isn't the most comfortable, so just saying, you know what, I'm going to get the damage that I can with the Virizion, and then send in the hard counter, which is going to be the Incineroar. Waiting the timer, sending in that shiny Incineroar. Incineroar, more than happy to absorb Dragon Claws in this matchup. The Giratina has a truly massive energy head start, and they are pretty close to 100 energy here. Dragon Claw is going to be no-shielded by the Incineroar. Incineroar makes it to the Darkest Lariat, but not before another Dragon Claw is reached. The shield by Incineroar, and another Dragon Claw by the Giratina. Oh no! This is going to get the Incineroar quite low. Incineroar, nearing 100 energy, going to go for the Blast Burn bait. The Blast Burn bait gets called. We now see a switch from the opponent into a Shadow Feraligatr, and this could get interesting. Shadow Feraligatr versus the Shadow Ampharos. These Volt switches will absolutely tear through the Feraligatr, but the question is, can the Ampharos survive a Shadow Hydro Cannon? It might be needed to win this game. Oh, this is going to be close. Shadow Ampharos, can it hang on here? No shields remaining. The Hydro Cannon picks up the KO, and that, unfortunately, is looking like it's going to be game over. Blast Burn shielded up by the Feraligatr. Feraligatr is able to get the farm down and take that game. Picking up a positive lead in the next match, Virizion versus Poliwrath. Virizion goes for, the opponent tries to go for the catch, but they are unsuccessful, holding on to the energy, and now in comes Incineroar to answer the Giratina. Last game, the Giratina had a near insurmountable energy head start, which proved to be a problem for the Incineroar, but in this game, with only a very small energy head start on the Giratina, this is a lot more manageable for the Incineroar. Building up well past the Darkest Lariat, successfully baiting with the Blast Burn, and now full sending the Darkest Lariat. Darkest Lariat does get shielded up, so Giratina double shielding for switch advantage, so they must have a pretty good check to that Virizion in the back. Incineroar, already shielded once, more than happy to shield a second time, trying to make it to the Darkest Lariat, and able to get to the Darkest Lariat. Opponent looks like they stuttered a little bit on their end, but the Darkest Lariat will connect and pick up the KO. In comes the Poliwrath. Poliwrath going to fire off the Icy Wind before this Leaf Blade is thrown. Icy Wind is going to connect, undertapping to prevent the opponent from trying to switch out after one counter. The Leaf Blade will connect. The farm up, the patience there as the opponent tries for the catch. They are unsuccessful with the catch attempt. And the brutal swing will connect, dealing massive damage to the Skeledirge. Skeledirge needs to go for a Shadow Ball to pick up a KO here. The Shadow Ball is going to pick up the KO. In comes the Virizion. Virizion forced to fire off the Leaf Blade as a Disarming Voice would be reached. The Leaf Blade picks up the KO. This is still not quite Icy Wind range, but it's not going to matter as the Leaf Blade is reached. Leaf Blade takes down the Poliwrath, and that's game over. Hopping into the final match, terrible lead, Virizion versus Shadow Dragonite. The save switch into the Shadow Ampharos. Shadow Ampharos will get outpaced by one turn due to that switch, and Ampharos is going to commit an early shield. We're now going to see a switch by the opponent into Shadow Drapion, and Ampharos able to make it to the back-to-back Thunder Punches. Opponent is going to shield the first, and you know what? Just get the damage that you can. Going for the back-to-back Thunder Punches. Thunder Punch number 2 is going to be no-shielded by the Drapion, and those Thunder Punches do add up quite a bit. Tough call to make, choosing not to shield here, just letting the Ampharos go, hoping against hope that with a shield in the back, Incineroar can do well. In comes the Virizion. Virizion farming up, trying to make it to the Sacred Sword, but one turn beforehand, the Sludge Bomb is reached, and that does massive damage. Virizion now going to go for the Sacred Sword. This will easily KO. The opponent still has a Dragonite, however, and that's going to be a problem. In comes the Incineroar. Incineroar farming up energy, can't make it to the Darkest Lariat before a potential superpower is reached. The superpower is going to be shielded up, and in the back, it's Registeel. Registeel, despite the fact that this is a fire type, due to the dark subtyping, Focus Blast is going to be an issue. Going to fire off another Blast Burn. Opponent has to commit a shield here if they want to get this energy off with the Registeel, and they do. Focus Blast is going to be able to pick up the KO, and it's all up to Virizion, but I think Virizion is just too low. Virizion looking to farm up to the back-to-back moves, having to hope that the Dragonite is in Sacred Sword range, but I think it's still in the yellow. In comes the Dragonite, and unfortunately that is going to be just a little bit too healthy. The Sacred Sword will connect, but Dragonite is able to take that game. All in all, Blast Burn and Darkest Lariat are pretty massive upgrades for Incineroar over its previous moves of Flame Charge and Dark Pulse, respectively. However, issues do still remain with Incineroar, the main one of course being water types completely run the open Ultra League meta. So if you're able to run into teams that don't necessarily have those water types, Incineroar can do quite well. However, I do feel like its true potential is yet to be unlocked due to the fact that the metagame is so hostile to it at the current moment. So I do think it's definitely worth playing this Calm Day, looking for the shiny, and evolving to get Blast Burn and TMing over to get Darkest Lariat, because Incineroar I think could definitely pack a punch in the future, but the current Open Ultra League meta is a bit tough for it. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.